Go ahead and click record and I will get my screen shared. Alrighty. Welcome. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to our virtual crabber workshop. This is a super exciting time with the crabbing season approaching, opening up on July 3rd throughout much of Puget Sound and other areas coming up soon. My name is Haley Sherman. I'm the project coordinator for the Northwest Straits Foundation, who is hosting this event. We are a nonprofit organization working to protect and restore marine resources of the Puget Sound region. And we do this through restoration projects, marine debris cleanup, such as derelict fishing gear, and a whole lot more. But before we get started, I'd like to take a few seconds just to guide you through some valuable resources that we have on our website for crabbing, which you can find at catchmorecrab.org. So I've got a video playing here to show you kind of how to navigate through our website. But first, as I mentioned, we are a nonprofit, so if you'd like to make a donation to support our work, you may do so by clicking on the donate button at the top of our screen, which is located on all of our web pages. Next, I'd like to guide you to some resources on our Catch More Crab webpage. You can navigate there by simply going to catchmorecrab.org or from our homepage to the Derelict Gear Removal drop-down page and selecting Catch More Crab. As you scroll down this page, you'll first find a checklist of things to do when you're planning or prepping to hit the water. Below that, you'll find instructional videos with demonstrations on how to implement the guidelines in our checklist above. Just waiting for the video to catch up. And lastly, we've compiled a list of web resources and phone apps that will help you along the way. All of these resources we've provided will be your guide to being a successful and responsible crabber. For this workshop, we ask that you submit all your questions using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Due to the amount of attendees, we will not be using the raise your hand or chat feature. All questions should be directed to the Q&A function circled there. We will read aloud your questions to the presenters and may answer some by typing in some answers. There will be time after each presentation for questions and answers. Our speakers today are Don Velasquez and Blair Winnicott from Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. We will begin with Don Velasquez presenting on Puget Sound crab management. So I will stop sharing and I will introduce Don while he gets set up. Don holds degrees from Oregon State University and University of Washington. His graduate work involved optimizing aquaculture conditions for juvenile geoduck clams, and he has worked with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife since 1993. His work at Department of Fish and Wildlife was with intertidal clam and oyster enhancement, and since 1995, he has been working primarily with the crab and shrimp fisheries in Puget Sound.
Thank you, Haley. I appreciate the introduction. Again, like Haley said, Blair and I will be giving the presentation today. We both work with recreational crab and shrimp fisheries out of the Mill Creek office. And I will share my screen and get to the presentation here. Okay. There we are. I hope everybody can see.
I don't see it, Don.
Okay. It'll be just one moment.
Oh.
That should do it, I think.
Yep, I think you just need to click present. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful.
There we go. Microsoft Teams person, in case people can't tell. Thanks again for the invite. Blair and I, our contact information is shown on the screen. Feel free to contact either of us if you have questions that don't get answered in this presentation today. This is the Catch More Crab Workshop. We've done this for a few years now with the Northwest Straits. They've been a great partner in helping educate crabbers About a third of the recreational crabbers every year are new. So this is an important function, and we sure appreciate the help. Some of the topics that we're covering today are crab management in Puget Sound, some of the management principles that we use for Dungeness and also for the other two species that you're allowed to harvest, red rock and tanner. We'll go over the harvest groups and how the allocation of crab is done and the timing of harvests. Blair will go over a lot of the recreational rules, the summer seasons, the rules we have in place for conservation and for allocation and orderly fishery and other information resources that are available to the public. And then I will go over some of the crab gear details and best practices, typical equipment and methods used for crabbing, some details that will hopefully improve your catch, some common mistakes to avoid things like trap loss and the kinds of crab mortality that come with trap loss, and how to maximize escapement from those lost traps. So these are the three species in Puget Sound that you're allowed to harvest under current rules. By far, follow my cursor, the left is Dungeness crab. Used to be Cancer magister. I think the recent renaming is Metacarcinus magister, known as the Dungeness crab. It's by far the most targeted crab in Puget Sound. Secondarily, there's harvest of red rock crab, Cancer productus, in the upper right, and a little known opportunity for southern tanner crab, Chionocetes bairdi. They do exist in Puget Sound in select locations, but they're at very deep depths, and they require some special techniques and skills that most people don't want to pursue. So the primary targets are Dungeness and red rock. Dungeness crab, Puget Sound's state fisheries. For the recreational fishery, you have to have a valid license. It can be the Get Outdoors license, the Fish Washington license, combination license, or shellfish license. And you also have to have a catch record card that comes with the Puget Sound crab endorsement. So you pay an extra fee to get that Puget Sound crab endorsement, except if you purchase the license packages, you get the endorsement and catch record card with that. The catch record card is specific to Dungeness crab. There's two separate seasons, a summer catch record card for all harvests prior to Labor Day or through Labor Day, and then a winter catch record card for any of the time period after Labor Day through the end of the season, which is December 31st. And just like salmon, Dungeness crab, as soon as they're retained, have to be recorded on your catch record card. One quick note, the number of people who purchase crab endorsements for Puget Sound Dungeness crab each year is between 195 and 240,000 endorsements. It's a huge number. And not all those people actually go crabbing for Dungeness crab. It's just the potential pool of participants is quite huge. State commercial Dungeness crab fisheries in Puget Sound. It's a limited entry fishery, meaning since 1980, no new licenses have been issued, and it was carved down from the number of licenses that existed at that time in 1980. For those 248 licenses, currently there's 121 license owners, meaning some of those people own more than one license. By law, each license is allowed to use 100 crab traps or pots per license. In reality, in recent years, each of those licenses is self-limited by industry to 35 to 50 pots just to extend their season and maintain the price paid to the fishermen for Dungeness crab. All landings have to be recorded on electronic fish ticket in today's world. It's an official document that's filled out by the fisherman and the buyer. And the season runs from October 1st through April 15th. And it operates only in the northern areas of Puget Sound, basically marine areas 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9. 10, 11, 12, and 13 in South Puget Sound and Hood Canal are reserved for recreational fishing. Puget Sound crab regions, they don't perfectly align with the marine areas that most recreational fishermen are aware of. And again, as you can see here, the northern regions have state commercial and recreational effort. The southern regions 4, 5, 6, and 7 are recreational only by WDFW commission policy. And if you want the translating, here's the marine areas on the map on the right and the crab regions on the left. And the table in the middle, sort of the translation table between marine areas and crab management regions. We use the regional structure to negotiate annual management plans with the treaty tribes, which I will get into here shortly. The treaty tribes back here in late 1994, early 1995, the Rafidi decision in the federal court system reaffirmed their right to harvest 50% of the harvestable surplus of all shellfish and not just Dungeness crab. And you can see here, this is landings by year from 1992 to 2024. The tribal commercial crab fisheries quickly picked up. And you can see in recent years, there's some variation year to year, but we've been trying to manage that fishery for that 50-50 sharing mandated in the Rafidi decision. If you look at the state fisheries, commercial in blue and recreational in red over that same time span, you will notice that in 2010, we had a policy revision of the Fish and Wildlife Commission, which basically took away the dedicated percentages that state commercial and state recreational had of Puget Sound Dungeness crab, and instead replaced it with a priority on recreational fishing. So beginning in 2011, when that new policy was enacted, the going direction from the commission was that all of southern Puget Sound was going to be reserved for recreational crab harvest, and state commercial crab harvest would only occur in the north part of Puget Sound. And furthermore, that state commercial opportunity would only be given once plans were made to accommodate both summer and winter recreational seasons. And you can see the recreational contingent was pretty much even in terms of pounds harvested to the state commercial in the next few years. Then beginning around 2016, there was a downturn in the southern parts of Puget Sound in the Dungeness crab population and southern Hood Canal. And in fact, in 2018, both marine areas 11 and 13 were closed. Both of those areas were closed in 2019 as well. And then marine area 13 has been closed since 2018, whereas marine area 11 has been open since 2020 with a much smaller quota. And as a result, the recreational community in terms of pounds harvested has lagged behind the state commercial fleet, which operates primarily in the healthier portion, North Puget Sound. In terms of what people might see in terms of pots on the water when these groups harvest, the tribal fisheries, you can probably see them anytime from mid to late April, depending on where you are in Puget Sound, through the next April. And the criteria that both the state and tribes have for managing the fishery is that 80% of the legal size crab at a given time in the year have to be hard shelled before anybody starts fishing. The summer recreational and winter recreational seasons are defined by the Fish and Wildlife Commission with a priority on the July through September or Labor Day timeframe for summer, and then winter recreational for most areas beginning in October and lasting through December 31st if there's enough quota allowing. Like I said earlier, the state commercial fleet by commission policy doesn't even hit the water till October 1st, and they could be on the water depending on how quotas last until middle of April. The summer fishery, as indicated here in the lower bar on this graph, is a 5-day-a-week fishery by commission policy. We keep Tuesdays and Wednesdays closed. That allows our enforcement program to basically sweep the waters of lost fishing gear that was lost during the week, which turns out to be a substantial number of pots. And then we start again Thursday and stay open through Monday. One of the questions frequently asked is during the open days of the week, can you leave your pots out overnight? And yes, the answer is yes, you can. You just cannot work your recreational gear from 1 hour before officials or 1 hour after official sunset to 1 hour before official sunrise to prevent theft, thievery. We don't want people out there in the middle of the night stealing crab from people's pots. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you have to have your gear out of the water, bottom line. And I will go to the total quota pie analogy. We at Fish and Wildlife love our food, so we use the pie analogy to show how we allocate the Dungeness crab resource to the various user groups. The total quota here, shown as a whole pie, that's the harvestable surplus of Dungeness crab. You could also think of this as the harvestable surplus of any of the shellfish in Puget Sound as well. The federal court order known as the Rafiti decision basically allocates the first level of sharing 50% to the treaty tribes and 50% to the state of Washington. And then the Fish and Wildlife Commission policy dictates the next level of allocation, and it's basically from state commercial and recreational. The original policy change had state commercial and recreational about even Steven, equal to each other. But as I mentioned earlier, since the population of Dungeness crab in South Puget Sound has fallen off, this is the current situation where the recreational piece of the pie has shrunk compared to the overall total. And here's where I'll pass it off to Blair Winnicott. He'll go over some of the Dungeness crab fishery management rules and regulations.
I think before we do that, I just want to remind folks, if you came on a little late, that we're using the Q&A function at the bottom. If you have any questions, I've seen a few hands raised, and we've got a ton of people on the webinar. So if you have questions, just put them in the Q&A. And I think we have just a few minutes for questions for Dawn, if you have.
Sure.
Some. Okay. We don't have any in the chat, but if anybody has one they want answered right now, I'll wait just a minute. But I actually have a question. I
Certainly.
saw your graph, and you mentioned the Dungeness crab population downturned. I think it was in the southern Puget Sound in like 2015, 2017. Do we know why that is or have an idea?
That's a good question. I don't think we fully understand. We've been doing some investigations with the Pacific Northwest Crab Research Group to determine whether larval supply is part of the problem. And they have light traps that collect crab larvae from South Sound, and they partner with groups out of British Columbia all the way up to British Columbia. So we've got some years of data that larval supply down in South Sound is pretty weak, in South Hood Canal as well. We suspect summer surface water temperatures might have something to do with that as well. Dungeness crab do not like to be as warm as red rock crab and graceful crab, their cousins. So those are two of the things that could partially explain that, but
Wow.
we're living with the reality of that right now. We're trying to explain it more fully.
Wow, thanks. We do have two questions. So one, can you clarify on the overnight pots one more time? I just want to make sure I understand.
Yes. So since where you have back-to-back open days, Thursday through Monday, you could fish your pots Thursday night into Friday, Friday night into Saturday, Saturday night into Sunday, Sunday night into Monday. They better be out of the water late Monday because they can't be on the water Tuesday or Wednesday.
Great. And another one, I thought that I read that Marine Area 10 is only open for recreational 2 days a week. Do these marine area restrictions supersede the 5-day-a-week schedule or just
Yes.
discussed? Yeah.
Yes. We have two marine areas, and Blair has the summer schedule coming up as a slide. But for areas where we have less quota than we're used to, and we need to manage at a tighter schedule, marine areas 10 and 11 specifically, we have them open only on Sundays and Mondays. So you would be able to fish your traps, for example, overnight, Sunday into Monday, but then late Monday, you better have the traps out of the water because it's closed for the next 5 days in those two marine areas.
And we'll do one more question. Has there been any focus on enhancing South Puget Sound crab?
There's been a lot of talk, and there's a genetic study that will come out shortly, and I won't speak to a lot of the specifics. We became aware of some of the findings that addresses some of the genetic differences between different Dungeness crab adult populations within Puget Sound and on the coast. We wanted that information before we start contemplating anything like crab transfers, uh, uh, crab hatcheries, which we don't have on the West Coast, and it's been done for blue crab. They are finicky critters that are tough to raise in a hatchery environment. They tend to eat each other, kind of thing. Um, so yeah, we are getting proposals like that for South Sound right now because it's been a long time where no fishing has occurred and the population really hasn't recovered much.
Okay, thank you. We'll stop there. We'll have more time for questions down the line. I will introduce Blair while you
Mhm.
guys switch seats. Blair will be presenting on Puget Sound recreational crabbing regulations and seasons. Blair is a crustacean fisheries biologist with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. His position focuses on the recreational fisheries of Puget Sound's crab and shrimp species, most notably Dungeness crab and spot shrimp. Blair supervises the crab monitoring or CREO program to collect data on catch and compliance of Puget Sound's recreational Dungeness crab fishery and promote outreach and education.
Thanks, Haley. So I'm going to be talking about the recreational rules for the various crab species in Puget Sound. So there's this term 3S management framework. This refers to size, sex, and season. So when we say size, there is a minimum legal size limit for Dungeness crab in Puget Sound. That is 6.25 inches across the carapace, which you can see here in this figure. If you follow my laser pointer, hopefully you can see that. This measurement does not include the outer points, which you can see here. So that's an important rule to know when you're going out to hopefully harvest Dungeness crab, 6.25 inches across the carapace. Only male Dungeness crab can be legally retained in the fishery. So this allows females the opportunity to reproduce without having that extra harvest pressure on the population. So only male Dungeness crab can be harvested. There is also this idea of season and the hardness of a crab. So in Puget Sound and Washington in general, you cannot legally retain crab termed soft or soft shell. So we structure seasons to limit interactions with crab that are in this soft shell stage. So when we structure our seasons in the summer, we're hopefully avoiding a lot of the soft shell crab. And I'll talk more about the soft shell in a little bit, how to identify them. We don't allow retention of soft shell crab, mostly because it's generally a poor quality of meat. Um, a lot of people don't particularly like the taste, and there's less meat versus a hard shell crab. And also, this season structure also reduces bycatch mortality, which might be increased with handling soft shell crab. So talking about size, again, it's 6.25 inches across the carapace, not including those last set of points. We recommend getting a crab gauge that can measure 6.25 inches. So when I say crab gauge, this is this gray bar up here measuring the crab, and you should avoid using a dollar bill or a ruler because they're not generally not reliable to accurately measure 6.25 inches. Out on the Washington coast, the size limit is actually 6 inches, and in the Columbia River, it's 5 3/4 inches. But if you are harvesting in Puget Sound, which is all of the waters east of the eastern portion of Marine Area 4, it is 6 1/4 inches. Here's an example of somebody measuring a legal size Dungeness crab. You can see this last mark here is 6 1/4 inches. So talking about sex of the crab, again, you cannot harvest female crab. It's male crab only. The primary way to identify whether you're looking at a male versus female Dungeness crab is female crab will have a wide abdomen, pictured here in the yellow, if you can follow my laser pointer. And male crab will have a very narrow abdomen. Thinking about the biology of these two differences, female crab, this is where they carry their eggs. So they have a large surface area to hold on to a lot of eggs, versus a male crab has a very narrow abdomen and they're not holding any eggs. So again, Puget Sound and elsewhere in Washington, only male crab can be harvested for Dungeness. And again, here's a picture of a female crab holding a large set of eggs. So thinking about the season structure, seasons again are planned around avoiding the molting period for male Dungeness crab. Recently molted softshell crab have not grown into their new shell, so again they'll have a lower yield of meat per individual crab. The meat quality can be poor, and you generally have a higher mortality of handling softshell crab versus hardshell crab. So here is a picture of a male Dungeness crab that has recently molted one of its shells. How the best way to identify if you were to capture a Dungeness crab, best way to identify whether it's soft shell is flip it over so you're looking at the abdomen of the crab, just like this picture here. And you want to move the claw up towards its mouth parts. And I kind of call it the armpit of the crab. And you want to press where the thumb is here. And if there's give that's greater than roughly a millimeter, you know you're handling a soft shell crab. So it'll actually poke in a little bit right here versus a hard shell crab. There will be no give. It'll just be hard. You can't press in where that thumb is. Some other identifying features are the carapace is free of barnacles or other fouling organisms. The leg hairs are typically blonde. The crab will seem light for its weight, or sorry, for its size. It'll be a light crab, even though it might be a bigger crab. Underside of the crab will be white to beige, and the leg membranes of balloon when the leg is compressed. So there's not a lot of meat between filled out. This crab will have lower meat quality in this leg here. Here's an example of a very soft crab. This is extremely rare to see, just because most crabs that are in this stage of molting will not crawl into a pot typically, just because they'll be easily crushed or killed by other crabs. But this is a pretty extreme example of a soft shell crab. So I'm going to transition to talking about red rock crab. So in Puget Sound, the size limit for red rock crab is 5 inches. Again, it's across the carapace as well, not including that last set of points. And again, best thing to use is a crab gauge. We recommend avoiding dollar bills and measuring tapes just because they could be inaccurate. One primary difference between red rock crab and Dungeness crab in terms of the recreational rules is that you are allowed to retain female red rock crab. So here is again a picture of a male red rock crab, narrow abdomen, and here is a female red rock crab. You can retain both species, or both sex, sorry. So in terms of the season structure, you are allowed to harvest red rock crab when the season is open for Dungeness crab. So a lot of our seasons, when we announce them, they're structured around take for Dungeness crab, and during that time, you can harvest red rock crab at any point the season is open for Dungeness crab. You cannot harvest soft shell red rock crab, just like Dungeness crab, again, for those exact same reasons of low meat yield, poor meat quality, and higher handling mortality. Don earlier mentioned tanner crab. This is a species you don't see as often if you're targeting Dungeness or red rock crab. As Don mentioned, they're very deep, and you need different gear typically to capture them, but they are a species that can be harvested in Puget Sound. So the minimum legal size of harvested crab is 4.5 inches, and it's just measured at the widest portion of the shell. Both males and females can be legally retained. Again, similar to red rock crab, the seasons are concurrent with Dungeness crab. So whenever the seasons are open for crab, you can harvest tanner crab. Soft shell tanner crab must still be released, and you can keep up to 6 tanner crab as a daily limit. So again, this is just a review of the harvest rules in Puget Sound area. So Dungeness crab, males only, 6.25 inches across the carapace. The daily limit is 5, so you can only keep 5 in a day. Red rock crab, you can keep both males and females, 5-inch minimum size, and the daily limit is 6. Tanner crab, similar to red rock crab, both males and females are allowed. The daily limit is 6, but the minimum size limit is 4.5 inches. For all 3 species, again, soft shell must be released. The back shell, the carapace, must be retained with you at all times. So a lot of people do like to clean their crab in the field, and not bring all the guts home. If you do clean your crab in the field, you have to retain the carapace, the shell, to prove to enforcement, if you are ever contacted, that the crab that you have and was cleaned was originally a legal size crab. It is important to note that keeping the claws only is illegal. So I know stone crab on the East Coast, there is a fishery where you can pull off the claw and you can put the crab back and only keep the claw. That is not allowed for any of these species in the state of Washington. You are potentially harming the crab if you only take a claw and put the crab back. It can grow claws back, but typically it takes a very long time, and the claw that's grown back is weaker than it typically would be. Yeah, it's a good time for questions as well.
Great. We've got 2 that specifically pertain to you, Blair.
Okay.
The first is there a best practice for handling soft shell crabs?
Yeah, so if you do encounter a soft shell crab, the best thing to do, since it's not a crab you can legally retain, is just to gently put it back in the water. If you're crabbing from a boat, just lean over safely to just drop it right in the water, and then it should be okay as it floats down to the bottom of the ocean. Yeah.
And how long after harvest does the carapace need to be retained?
Um, it it needs to be retained until the Washington code or the law is that you have to retain the shell until you get back to your residence, which could be your legal house. So it does have to be retained essentially once you get off the water and drive back to your house.
And when you say the limit is 5, is that per license of person in the boat? And is there a trap limit?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the limit is 5 per person. So you can have each person on a boat can retain 5 Dungeness crab. So there's no limit to the boat for the number of crab you can keep. So
And I think there's a 2 trap per person limit.
Yeah, and if you're curious about gear requirements on the boat, I think Don will talk about that a little more, but you can only have 2 traps per person on the boat too. But in terms of the number of crab, everybody can have 5.
And then we've got a couple questions that are a little bit more. Oh, this one came in during Dawn's presentation.
Mhm.
Sometimes the weather becomes severe and it can be dangerous to try and recover the traps before sunset on Monday. Can that be a rational reason to not recover pots before the Tuesday cutoff?
Yeah. Do you want to take this one, Don?
Yeah. I hope you can hear me. Basically, if you run into that situation, our enforcement program needs to know. There's a contact number for the enforcement program. I think it's listed under Wildcom, where you can let our enforcement program know that, hey, for whatever reason, safety issue, I'm not able to get my gear. This is where it's located. They'll forward that message to the detachment that works that water so that they will know that you let them know ahead of time that you were unable to get your gear. You may be given the permission from enforcement to retrieve your gear. You just will have to dump all the crap out.
Yeah.
Right.
Were you able to hear that, Haley?
I was.
Okay.
So, yes.
Yeah, that was a good question.
Um, just a clarifying question from the earlier, 5 per day is what you were saying.
Yeah, 5 crab per person per day.
Okay. And did you have more slideshow to go to, or are we going straight into
Yeah.
pot?
Yeah, I think we have a couple more. I think Don's going to come over and we're going to switch right now.
Okay. Now's a good time, and we'll answer the rest of the questions later.
Okay, these are the summer recreational crab seasons for 2025 that have been announced. Again, one of the earlier uh, participants noted that marine areas 10 and 11 are only open Sundays and Mondays through the summer, from July 6th through September 1st, which is Labor Day this year, total of 18 days. That's largely because there's a lower quota for state share in those areas, and that shorter season in the summer could potentially offer some winter opportunity. And so in those areas, it's only open Sundays and Mondays. In most of the other areas, it's going to be opening July 3rd through September 1st, Thursdays through Mondays. So only Tuesdays and Wednesdays are closed. The exceptions there being 7 South, which opens in mid-July through September 29th. 7 North, the start date has not been announced yet. We are not announcing that until we get the results of shell condition testing, but the target is to open that in mid-August. And we have 2 closed areas, which are shown here in the red circles. Southern Hood Canal, that's Marine Area 12 south of Ayoc Point, has been closed since 2019, and Marine Area 13 has been closed since 2018. Both those areas, because Dungeness crab populations are struggling in those 2 regions. And again, our crab seasons are really focused on Dungeness crab. One thing to note here is that even though the announced seasons for 7 South and 7 North will be continuing through September 29th, the summer catch record card period ends on September 1st. So if you are in Marine Area 7 and you're fishing after September 1st, you have to switch over to your winter catch record card. Remember, there's 2. There's a summer one and a winter one. And the seasons after October 1st will only be announced if quota remains after the summer crab estimates are produced. And that winter season, if a full winter season is allowed, it's October 1st through December 31st. Catch record cards, again, like Blair had mentioned, these are used to generate the Dungeness crab catch estimates for Puget Sound. You don't need one for the coast. It's only if you're keeping Dungeness crab in Puget Sound. Again, there's two cards. You have two options for reporting your card by the deadline. You can submit it by mail, option one, or you can submit it online, option two, during the online reporting period. You also have another option if there's a WDFW regional office, like here in Mill Creek, you can drop it off before the deadline at the office. The penalty for failing to report your catch is a $10 administrative penalty on next year's license. We recently at Fish and Wildlife have been given the leeway to change that, and I wouldn't be surprised if that penalty in the future increases because we have some compliance issues with the reporting requirement. The most recent percent of people who reported their catch record cards in summer was 46%, and for winter was 49%. So we need those numbers to improve. This is just showing the number of crab harvested per reported catch record card in summer of 2020. And what this is showing is that not all those summer catch record cards have crab to report. In fact, a sizable portion had zero crab to report. So not everyone actually goes crabbing or is successful going crabbing. Some news items for the 2025 recreational crab season. These are things that you should just be aware of, and I can't go into too much detail because of the time. People should know that there's a license fee increase as of July 1st, so you still have a few days to purchase your licenses before the prices go up. There is an upcoming rule to establish some fishing closure zones around the Washington State ferry terminals, and you will be hearing about that shortly. But basically, the 19 ferry terminals managed by Washington State Ferries will have closure zones for crab pots, shrimp pots, and set net finfish gear starting this year. Fish and Wildlife will be interviewing recreational crabbers to collect fishery information and data. We've been doing that in 2023 and 2024. We'll be doing it again in 2025. And the last item here is one of our treaty co-managers has begun tagging crabs with Floy spaghetti tags. These are tags that are attached here at the suture line or where the shell splits toward the right rear of the crab, and they have a phone number. The Swinomish tribe has done this to track movements and growth of crabs that they've been able to tag. If you report usable information to them about any tag crab, they will enter you into a raffle for not just a commercial crab pot, or a recreational crab pot. And we may be seeing more managers tagging crab in the future. So just giving you that heads up. And other sources of information that you might find useful. The new Washington Sport Fishing Rules pamphlet is out as a downloadable PDF. That is effective July 1, and that's the location on on the website for e-regulations. If you want Washington Dungeness crab regulations and seasons, they are available at the website here. You have a downloadable PDF sport crabbing brochure for Puget Sound. It's very useful and compact, and it's downloadable at this site. If you need information about the invasive European green crab, which I won't go over in depth here, there's the link there. If you need more information on the catch record card system for Dungeness crab, there's the link. And then, of course, I think Haley already pointed out the Northwest Straits website, some of the work that they do. And just anyone who's downloaded the Fish Washington app for their phones, the Fish Washington app now also has information for crab and shrimp on it. Any questions from that set?
All right. Well, the first question, where does a recreational fisher look to find info regarding the winter catch season?
That will be announced in a news release, generally around the mid to late September timeframe from Fish and Wildlife. And as soon as that news release goes out, you'll see the crab seasons and areas page be updated with those winter seasons.
Any information on digital catch card?
Good question. That has been delayed, and I don't know a lot of the details other than the original contractor working on the electronic catch record card system uh, missed a deadline, I believe, and so it had to be re-advertised. And we had a new competition for someone to partner with Fish and Wildlife to develop that electronic catch record card application. Implementation has been delayed until at least next year, is what I've heard.
Okay. Do the crab tags come with information like bird bands?
I I don't think so. I know what kind of information the co-managers that are tagging would like to see. They would like to see location uh, and carapace width measurement. If you have a gauge that measures in inches or millimeter, a caliper, they would love to have that information, knowing that most recreational harvesters do not have a crab gauge like that. Unless you're a crab nerd like myself, you won't have that. So at least the location of where the crab is recaptured uh, would be useful information for crab movement, at least.
And then we'll just do two more. How much is the license and where can we get them?
You can get the licenses from our website, wdfw.wa.gov, and there's a search box in the upper right hand corner where you can type the word licenses. It should take you to the fish hunt page where you can make your account, buy your licenses online. You can also get those licenses at any license dealer in the state. Most of the sporting goods stores are licensed dealers, um, and the sporting goods departments can sell you a license. So, and then you come to a regional office like the Mill Creek office, we can sell licenses as well.
And what are we to do with tagged crab? Are they to be released or just called in and reported?
Call in and report if it's a legal size male and it's tagged. Yes, of course you can keep it. Other than the tag itself, nothing's been done to that crab. That tag is applied in that way because it's retained through the molts. So it can give us important information on growth over time. And so nothing else has been done to the crab, no poisons or, injected into it or anything else. It's just basically a garment tag attached at the suture line.
Okay. We have a few more questions, but I will do my best to type in answers and then we can answer them right after this next section.
Okay.
But we will go to our final presentation with Don. He's going to show you how to properly set up your gear. So there we go.
I have a few slides for that before we go into the video part.
Okay.
So first off, there's a lot of different ways you can harvest crab. The common rule is you can't pierce the shell when you're harvesting crab. Obviously, that's a rule because if you pierce the shell and you find it, oh, it's a little bit undersized or a female, there's no going back, right? So the different methods for harvesting crab include dip nets, wading in the shallows, star traps, which are similar to ring nets in that they lay flat on the bottom. You pull on the cord, the sides come up and create a basket, and you can pull the crab up that way. You usually put bait at the bottom. The most common ways to harvest crab are using traps, like this round commercial trap in the upper right where my cursor is. By far the most common recreational trap is these square foldable, they call them Danielson style because that was the company that was selling them early on. They're portable, easily folded down, and they're light and inexpensive. There's the castable devices that either clamp down on the crab or entangle the legs. You can tie them to the end of a fishing line and cast them out into the salt water to catch your crab. They count as a unit of gear. So when we say 2 units of gear, it could be this and this, this and this, any combination of these. A dip rake is another one. Again, you can't pierce the crab on those spines. It's just a tease the crab out of the sand and lift them up when you're waiting for crab. And you can also just grab them by hand, scuba diving or snorkeling. By far, the most common and successful method of crab harvesting is with traps. And there are a lot of rules on how to set up your traps and a lot of guidelines that will help you keep your traps. And some of those have already been noted by Haley, some of those videos on the Northwest Straits website. But when it comes down to regulations, you have to have half red, half white buoys on all recreational crab traps. You can have more than one, but they all have to be half red and half white. You can't use other colors. On one of those buoys, you have to have your full first and last name and address on the buoy. Phone number is optional. Enforcement needs to see that and be able to read that to verify that people are only using 2 units of gear per person. And if that gear is lost, they need that information to at least try to get that back to you. I can tell you, if you don't put all this information on your buoy and it's legible and it's out there on a closed day and our enforcement sweeps gear off the water, you probably won't be getting that gear back. That's reason enough to make sure that gear is labeled properly. That's not a recent rule. That's a long-standing rule. Always attach these buoys with the round end pointing down to the trap. We see problems with that, and I can detail that a little bit later in the presentation. Basically, it's less drag in the water as the current picks up, and it catches less debris that's moving by in a current. The lines have to be weighted, or they have to be sinking line. I suggest not trying to use floating line and adding weight like shown here. I suggest using leaded line that naturally sinks. That way it doesn't tangle in debris on the surface of the water or in some propellers, and it's not an issue in that way. It won't get cut off. Minimize line drag for crab gear and even shrimp gear. I think 1/4 inch to 5/16 leaded line is probably the best. It's low diameter. Think of this line in the water column as being a sail. You don't want a lot of drag because then your pot will start moving off station. Don't use 3/4 inch diameter line for your crab pot for drag alone. It would result in lost gear. Use the escape cord. This is required and is shown here in the diagram. Escape cord rots away, and if your trap is lost, it will let the crab out. And it's required on shrimp pots and crayfish pots as well. And for these lighter trap designs, like the square folding design, weights are highly recommended. It keeps your trap on station. If you want to see a humorous video on what happens when you put a light trap and don't add weight to it, there's a video on YouTube called How to Lose Your Crab Pot. It was a gentleman that put his GoPro camera in his lightweight crab pot, and we found the crab pot far from where it was deployed and returned it to him, and he made a video out of it. It's pretty funny. Flags and staffs on the buoys, these are optional, but if you have a lot of red and white buoys out in the same area, you want to identify your gear from all the rest, it's a good way to personalize the gear, and that's totally legal. Some other recommendations noted here on the right: know your water depth, have at least enough line, maybe is a third longer than the maximum water depth to account for the tide height change. Watch your pots if possible. I know that's not always possible the way people fish. Never use empty containers as buoys. That is actually illegal. Their shape may increase drag and they can fill with water and sink, and then you'll lose your gear. And then avoid setting traps in areas of high risk. I mentioned that already as an upcoming change about the ferry terminal area closures, but even without that rule, try to avoid areas where there's heavy vessel traffic or other fishing gear or floating debris. Some other things that people often forget when they go out crabbing is take the current rules pamphlet. Those rules pamphlets generally in effect from July 1 through June 30th. Definitely bring your catch record card, license, and pen. You're supposed to fill out your catch record card in ink. and you're supposed to fill it out immediately when you retain the crab before you reset the pot. That is the criteria enforcement uses about whether they give you a ticket or not. Bring your crab caliper. If you're going for a red rock crab, make sure that caliper has a 5-inch measurement on it. Some people, believe it or not, go out there and they've got everything but the bait. Bring some bait. The commercial baits are mackerel, sardines, salmon, clams, and squid. The more publicly available baits do include chicken and turkey. Don't let anybody tell you different. They do work and they are available to the public. But if you want to battle with the big boys, the commercial ones, this is what they use at the beginning of that list. Bring a container for your catch. And the best way to keep your crab alive, particularly in the summer fishery where it gets hot, is to just bring some cold packs or ice and seawater soaked towels or burlap and throw that in a cooler. You don't need to keep the crab underwater. In fact, if you put a bunch of crab in water in the summertime without a way to aerate that water, they will certainly be dead in short order. So this method with the seawater soaked towels and ice in a cooler probably will keep your catch in better shape. And one final lessons from our gear sweeps. Our enforcement program, like I mentioned on the closed days, does go out and sweep the water. And a lot of this gear is lost gear. Some of it is poaching gear, people who aren't following the rules. And you can see from the pictures the kind of volumes we're talking about on the closed days. It's not uncommon in a given year for enforcement to sweep 1,100 to 1,300 pots from different areas of Puget Sound. How do traps become derelict? A lot of different ways. Traps are set too deep. Sometimes the sand at a river mouth or sediment will bury the trap, and then the average person can't pull it out of the sediment. Vessel traffic will strike the lines and buoys. Trees and woody debris out of rivers will tangle them up and drag them off. Owners forget where they place them. Knots and line connections fail. People, not everyone is a Boy Scout and knows how to tie a knot that won't slip. Some of the really creative ones are ice flows in the winter will trap buoys and drag traps away as the currents move the ice. So just be aware there's a lot of different ways that your trap can become derelict, even for people who've tried to do everything correct. Some of the data from our enforcement sweeps shows that, in a given year, anywhere between 1,600 in 2018 and a little over 1,000 traps this year were out there on the closed days. Again, a lot of those were lost traps. Some of those were poaching traps as well. Most of them are recreational. And what I wanted to point out here is starting in 2021, we started looking at those buoys to see if they met the legal definition of full name and address. And what we're finding is that they don't. Most of the gear does not. And that's a long-standing rule. So if there's anything you get out of this, when you go crabbing, make sure your buoy is labeled properly and is legible. And you'll be doing better than most of these people that have their gear out on closed days. This is by gear type. In blue, by far most of that recreational gear that enforcement recovers are those light square folding traps, and that's not surprising. This one would surprise me when we started doing this work. How many of those traps had the buoys attached incorrectly? And I'll show you a picture what buoys attached incorrectly means. But basically, the round end of the buoy wasn't firmly attached, so it's pointing down to the trap. It was either attached sideways or with 3 or more buoys attached to maximize drag. So this is what we consider incorrect buoy attachment. You can see this is the flat end of the buoy. The round end of the buoy is pointing up to the sky, the flat end down to the trap. Same thing here. They've even made it even less desirable by making it a big flat surface. It would be more drag in the current, catch more kelp, more likely to drag the pot off station. And again, we already mentioned the illegal jugs. All these are examples of improper buoys and improper buoy attachments that would lead to gear loss. The other thing that we note when we do these recoveries is how many of these traps do not have added weight. Some of the traps, by nature of their design, have a lot of weight in their construction, particularly the commercial traps, but a lot of the lighter designs don't. And we've noticed a lot of that gear that we pick up on closed days is unweighted. And that, again, that's not surprising. Floating line, there is an issue with that. It's much smaller issue amongst this gear, as you can see here, 15 to 9% of the gear that's recovered has floating line. How do we maximize escapement from our lost traps? Obviously, there's a rule to use escape cord. Use that required escape cord. If you have hemp, sisal, or jute, it actually rots faster than cotton. So cotton is just the most common because it's available, but you can use these other natural fibers. You can use smaller cord than what's required by law. Thread size 120 is legal, but if you go thread size 60, it's even better for rotting quicker if your pot is lost. And you can use 3 loops of cord and tie escape rings in with escape cord or rot cord. And those are pretty effective ways to allow crabs out. And the least effective is escape cord on the top door with a lip at the edge. So here's a good way to use your escape cord, holding in an escape ring. This will allow the crabs to easily escape. This is escape ring up in the corner that rotted out. Crabs can easily escape. This is the arrangement where escape cord, when it rots, doesn't allow the crab to easily get out unless you have some kind of modification to open up the top hatch, and then the crab can negotiate that and get out. And that's it for that part of the presentation.
All right, we've got quite a few questions here. Would we like to hold on and you get to the next part, or would you think you have time for a few?
I have time for a few, and then I can go to the live video and we can get up the traps.
Okay. The first one came in a bit ago. I think they were talking about marking their buoys with their information. Is it also required from a pier? They are concerned about security issues with somebody getting personal details after they leave the area.
That's a good question. And unfortunately, you're probably not going to like the answer. If you leave your gear unattended at a pier, and that's the requirement. Any gear that's left unattended has to have that red and white buoy with all that information. So if you are fishing a ring net off a pier and you never leave it, you're right there. No, you don't have to put the information on a buoy. As soon as you go get a coffee around the corner, yes. Same thing out on the water. If you are anchored in a boat and you throw a line off with a pot in the water and you're right there at the end of your line, you don't have to put anything on a red and white buoy and throw it in the water because you're attending the gear. As soon as you leave and throw that off the side, then it's unattended gear. Then you have to have that labeling.
Next question. Do all buoys need to be red and white? I have a red and white and a second yellow. Is that okay?
No. Yellow is reserved for shrimp and red and white's reserved for crab. And the way the rules are written, I know it's not in practice because I've been out on the water and I've seen the gear. The way the rules written, all recreational crab buoys have to be half red, half white. Shrimp buoys have to be yellow.
There's another question, yeah, asking if you can have colored buoys attached to the red and white buoy. Is that
Letter of the law is no.
Yeah.
That's letter of the law.
Okay. And let's see. Is there a limit on how close to the shoreline you can set pots?
The rule that I'm aware of is that pots need to be covered by water at all tide heights and times. So if your pot is high and dry at any point in time, it's too close, it's illegal. Uh, but as long as it's covered by water at all tide heights and times, then you're okay.
We'll do one more. How much bait per pot is recommended in weight or volume?
Bait. Um, to me, it's largely dependent on the area. Um, I've gone crabbing with just a chicken back from the grocery store and caught crab, and that's been fine. Other times, if there's a lot of competition in the area, particularly with superior baits, maybe that's not enough. And maybe it's not even the amount of bait; it's the type of bait. And what was the other part of that question? I'm sorry.
It was just asking how much volume or weight to use.
Yes. Most of the lighter styles of crab pots could benefit from 10 to 15 pounds of added weight. And I'll show you some options for adding weight in the video here. But those lighter styles don't have a lot of weight in the construction. And so if you put that out in extreme tide exchange and you get one thing of kelp wrapped around your buoy line at the buoy, it could be just enough drag to bring it off station. So that's why it's good to add at least 10 to 15 pounds to really light crab designs. Some of the commercial pots are already weigh 50 to 70 pounds, so there's no need to add weight to those.
Yeah, so I realize we're a little bit over time. If folks are able to stay on, we still have a little bit more and we'll try to get all of your questions answered. So apologies.
Should we go right to the video demonstration?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing, go to the video. This. Okay. So this is one style of not a trap. This is a ring net. The definition of ring net or star trap is something that lies flat on the bottom when it's fishing. So in this case, first of all, you'll note that I've got a properly labeled buoy. So I intend to fish this ring net and leave it. It has my full name, first and last, and address, legible on the buoy, round side down. This ring net fishes by basically attaching some bait to the bottom ring, and you lower it down into the water. It lays flat on the bottom. It sits like that. And then once the crab have found the bait, you can pull it up. It's a popular piece of gear to use, particularly at piers. And it's quite effective. It doesn't come with a lot of the other requirements of crab pots that I will go into here in a bit. That's the ring net. Here's one kind of crab pot. And I'll go into all the components of that. This crab pot, again, properly labeled buoy, single buoy setup, half red, half white, full name and address, legible. Legibility is key. This is called a crab pot harness. It's usually a 4-point attachment. It just allows you to pull the pot straight up. In this pot, there is a bait container built right into the middle. As you can see here, you basically put your bait inside this cage in the center of the pot. You close the top door, and this hook will secure that top door and the top door to the bait container. The rot cord on this pot is incorporated right here on this strap. This is cotton cord. When this pot is lost, that cord will rot This will come loose, and that top door, because I put bungees on this, will pull open and allow the crab to escape. Without this addition here, crab would have a tough time negotiating that lip and getting out. The important parts of this crab pot are we've added some weight bars to the bottom, right here and right here. And you want to test all your gates. This one has 4. They're designed to go one way and not open out. Crab will go in from all 4 sides of this design. You want to make sure they swing freely. The other component of crab pots that is very important for all pot designs is these escape rings. These are 4 1/4 inch inside diameter escape rings. There has to be 2 in the upper half of the pot. This one has 2. And these allow the smaller crab and a lot of the female crab to come and go. This pot will be a feeding station for all those crab, and it will select out the legal size males, hopefully if they're in that area. Again, that is one recreational style of crab pot. I think I've gone over all the pieces that you need to see. Any questions so far, Haley?
Yes, very simple one. Was that a leaded line?
Yes, I should have gone into that. This is leaded line. It typically has a colored strand and is largely gray-blue in color. If you see a lot of solid yellow line, that's probably polypropylene line, and that floats. So that will spool at the surface. You can use it, but you have to weight the line so it doesn't spool at the surface. I prefer just using leaded line like this.
Is the escape door and 2 escape rings required, or just 2 escape rings?
2 4 1/4 inch escape rings are required, and the escape cord is required. Some commercial styles of pots have more than 2 escape rings just because they really want the little crabs to come and go and just keep the big keepers.
So those were very pot specific. We've got a lot of other questions that are general that have come in throughout. If you're
Okay.
ready from.
I have one more pot and buoy arrangement to show you, and then we'll tackle the rest of the questions.
Alrighty.
This is another style of crab pot. This is a round, sort of modeled after the commercial pots. Again, we have leaded line, gray line here. We have the round end of the red and white buoy facing the pot. We have a second half red, half white buoy. On top of that, we have our name, full name, and address. This is what's called a high flyer setup. It has a pole and a flag. So this one sticks up a little bit off the surface of the water and is identifiable from all the single red and white buoys that you might see out there. People personalize this part, be tasteful about it, just want to be able to recover your own gear. And it's easily grabbed when you pull up in a boat just by reaching down and grabbing the pole in the water. This pot has all the features of the last one. This is a crab pot harness, 4-point harness. The door to get the crab in and out is on the top and plops open like that. The escape cord is on this bail strap. When this rots, this door will pop up and let the crab out if the crab pot is lost. It's got built-in weight bars in the bottom. This one only has 2 gates to allow crab in. And instead of a built-in bait container, it's got one that you can attach with this hook and suspend in the middle of the trap. And that's important when you're fishing, to place the bait where crab can't work at it from any place outside the trap. If you put it up in the corner or something like that, crab are very happy to avoid going in and just working the bait there, and you won't catch as many crab. Make sure it's in the center, and they have to enter the trap to reach it. If this is not enough weight for your crab pot, there's a lot of things you can do. You can buy these kind of weights. You can use your old workout weights that you don't use anymore because you don't do that kind of thing in the gym. You got to put them to good use. You can strap them down into the lower part of your trap. Just make sure that the weights don't interfere with the function of the gates in your trap. That's all I had to show you on the gear. So any questions, I think Blair and I can answer.
Um, this is a big one because there's lots of thread counts, but how long does it take for a escape line to rot?
That's a great question. We did some studies in Port Townsend with the largest cotton escape cord, thread size 120, and down to smaller fibers made from jute and sisal. And the range of that stuff was between 7 weeks and 15 weeks to rot in the conditions of the marine environment that we tested at Port Townsend. So the largest cotton escape cord took 15 weeks. The shortest amount of time, I believe, was like jute or sisal, which was a smaller diameter natural cord.
We've got a whole report about this on our website if anybody's interested. Let's see. There's a lot of questions about the recovered pots. Let's see, where do we start? What do you do with all the gear you collect from sweeps? We'll start there.
A lot of the stuff that's properly labeled, which we already saw how few of those are properly labeled. Those people generally get contacted and we try to get their gear back to them. The ones that aren't properly labeled, if it's in good shape, enforcement donates that gear to nonprofits like Salmon for Soldiers or Jefferson County Search and Rescue. And I believe there's a couple power squadrons too. The gear that is in really bad shape, looks like it's been out there for a while or is not really in a refurbished type state, we recycle. We get sent to a recycler.
Yeah, there was another question that was asking if the recovered pots are available for sale. That might be more related to the derelict gear, potentially not the sweeps, and those we do not sell. So
Yeah, the sweeps gear that's in good shape and is not identifiable to owner because they didn't put the right information on the buoy, they are available through nonprofits. Jefferson County Search and Rescue, I think, has 2 auctions every year. Maybe just 1, I'm not sure.
you don't happen to know the dates of that sale, do you? I could probably find it, but there is a question about it.
I do not.
Okay. I will try and put it in the chat once I find it. And all right, I'll start at the beginning. We'll get back to some old questions. If you could break it down for a beginner, where do you suggest I set my trap? Should I go to a pier or where do you suggest?
I will give my thoughts and then maybe Blair can chime in. I frequently get questions about pier crabbing. And it's a tough one because if you want your children to see crabs, not necessarily to keep things that are legal, yes, by all means, you can go to a pier. The problem with piers is a lot of people do not have vessels, and piers concentrate the harvest activity at the pier. And so unless you get there early in the season, your likelihood of getting legal size red rock or Dungeness is pretty low at the piers. If you don't have a boat, make friends with someone who does, is my advice. Blair, do you have anything to add to that?
I would say a lot of people, if you have one, do use kayaks, canoes, inflatables, even foldable kayaks, inflatable paddleboards that you could fit even in a smaller car. If you do use those, which do give you some access to areas where you can't get with piers, just do it safely, wear a life jacket, and just know how to use a kayak or paddleboard. But those are some ways you can go out to some deeper waters where you can't get up here.
Yeah. And I'll offer one other thing. I have tried, at a low tide, going to a location that I know has crabs, throwing my crab pot as far out as I can from shore, watching the tide come in, and then pulling my pot in from there. And I have caught crab that way, but that's desperate when you don't have a boat.
Yeah, I believe this person asking didn't have a boat or a paddleboard, so
Yeah.
if you can toss it.
Yeah.
Where is the best place to catch Dungeness in the state and or Seattle area if you don't have access to a boat or paddleboard? So,
Good question. By far, most of the crab harvest in Puget Sound comes from Marine Area 7, which is not necessarily close to Seattle. The further south you go in Puget Sound, the tougher in general Dungeness crabbing is, the more likelihood that you will get red rock crab currently. That said, there are some very productive Dungeness crab locations if you know where to go. For example, in Marine Area 10, we have test fishing sites at places like Port Madison, Merton Cove, right by Alki Point. And so those places have produced for us in the test fishing, preseason and postseason test fishing mode. The range of success rates can go from one Dungeness, legal Dungeness per pot on an overnight soak of a commercial crab pot down in Marine Area 13, which is currently closed, to over 40 or 50 preseason up in Area 7 at some locations. So that gives you a sense of the range. There's a lot of online resources. There's a shellfishing Facebook group that will share some information on that. And, if you're really desperate to find locations, you can send an email to psrecreationalcrab@dfw.wa.gov. We can give you some ideas.
awesome. Why don't stainless steel traps fish it? Why don't stainless steel traps fish as well?
Uh, I think the commercial traps that have a lot of stainless steel, like in the mesh, they do fish well. And part of the reason is they have zinc anodes on the metal to make them electrically neutral. This pot doesn't really have, it has a boat zinc attached here on this lower bar, but I think that's part of the problem. If you just fish a stainless steel trap without some kind of way to add a zinc to the metal parts of the trap, crab are put off by that somehow. I don't know, but a lot of the commercial pots are stainless steel mesh, and they have zincs, and they fish quite well.
Awesome. What resource do you use to find the max depth at your location for estimating line length?
Yeah, a lot of crabbers with boats will have a depth sounder as part of their equipment, so they use that. You can have a measured line on your boat if you don't have a depth sounder with a weight, and then just lower that to measure the depth before you drop your crab pot and line in. It's always a good idea to drop the pot in and don't let loose of the line until you know it's hit bottom, and then make sure it has some scope for the tide change. So be aware of what the tide is when you're setting your gear, and what the tide's going to be over the time that it's soaking. You don't want your buoy being underwater and then getting hit by something that doesn't see it.
This question is a little bit vague. You might be able to answer it. It just says average water depth trapped? Question mark.
Oh, average water depth where people set their traps.
Yes, probably.
Yeah, if that's the question, you can catch crab in very shallow water depending on certain times of the year. Dungeness crab mate in the shallows in late spring, early summer. So they are in shallow then. Keep in mind, most of your recreational competitors are probably geared up to fish shallower water. They have short line lengths. So those are the first areas to get fish down or crab down. Later in the season, particularly, you're getting away from the spring, summer period where they're in shallow anyway. You might explore the deeper water. It probably hasn't been hit as hard as the shallower water that most people have access to. And that's where maybe the longer line lengths and deeper sets will be productive.
Okay, last question. Do you ever need any help parsing, recording, or reporting on the data?
The best help you can give us is educate other crabbers with the resources we pointed to, both Northwest Straits and Fish and Wildlife. Make sure you know the rules and the people that you go out with know the rules. Again, a third of the crabbers each year are pretty much new. And so it's a huge educational piece to make sure they're aware of all the rules. And when you do go crabbing, record your crab immediately and report the crab before the deadline. Again, I mentioned less than half of the people report their crab. And that is a problem for the state in generating reliable and believable catch estimates.
Great answer. We actually have one more that came in. Are there any special rules for collecting while scuba diving?
Good question, especially as that pertains to recording your crab on your catch record card. I've been told by enforcement that there is some leeway there, and that as soon as you get out of the water and you're getting up on shore, have that catch record card where you can record your crab. The people in boats will not get that kind of leeway. As soon as enforcement scopes you from a distance, sees that you've kept crab, and you haven't recorded and you throw your pot back in, they may come up on you. Scuba divers will get some leeway.
Great. Well, I don't see any more questions. I did put the information about the crab pot sales in the chat. It looks like the next one, or the crab pot fundraiser for search and rescue, the next one's June 27th. If anybody's near
Wow, I didn't
Jefferson
know it was that
County.
close.
Yes. So good timing.
Yeah.
Well, we should be good to go then. Thank you both so much for presenting all this great information. Thank you everybody for joining and staying late. Apologies. And happy crabbing to everybody. So,
Yes, thank you. It was a
yes.
pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, guys.